My name is Nico Serra. I use they pronouns, and I am Black, Latinx, disabled, transgender, queer person. I'm a community organizer and activist, former public school teacher, wilderness guide, and I was a Bernie delegate in 2016. I'll do a little backstory. So when I moved to Portland back in 2010, about 6 weeks after I got here, I was riding my bicycle and unfortunately was hit by a car when I was riding and dragged around a corner. And I fell through all sorts of cracks. And the end result is that I can no longer hold my musical instruments anymore. I was a French horn player and used to be a band director. And for about 5 years, and especially before the Affordable Care Act, my life was a complete mess. It was right at the beginning of my transition. My family had essentially completely turned their back on me. And yeah, I was kind of scrapping to survive. Other people of color and other trans people and other queer people were the ones that helped me survive those years. And then I saw Bernie on the first debate back in December of 2015, and I was like, who is this guy? And I got activated, and I basically have just gotten involved with various projects since then. I went to Philadelphia and was a delegate for Bernie and did some stuff with the Democratic Party. So now what I do is I'm on the board for Healthcare for Oregon, where we're working to get universal healthcare in Oregon so everybody has healthcare access no matter what, no matter who they are, whether or not they're a documented person or if they're trans or whoever they are, they get healthcare. Everyone gets healthcare. And then the other nonprofit I sit on is called Real Choice Initiative. It's all about getting people with disabilities out of institutions and into independent living situations. So out of like group homes or nursing homes and things like that, and into like their own apartment if that's what they want to go, or if they're in a nursing home and they want to go to a group home, and that sort of thing. It's all kind of up to the person and what they want. I do a lot of organizing in the trans community. I help with different solidarity events, and like I spoke at a rally last night at City Hall, and I was on KBOO last night on our local radio show talking about transgender experience and the memo that was released by the Trump administration recently, where they're essentially trying to institutionally eradicate trans people. So this month is also Trans Awareness Month. So people are already like, oh, trans people exist and they need help. So people are really paying attention to us this month, and it's been even more activated because of the memo. There are hate groups and other groups of people that want to erase certain populations, and trans people are among those populations. And the reality is that we have existed forever. We're here, we're queer, we're born every day, and we're gonna be here forever. We're very resilient people. Many of us, including myself, have attempted suicide and have spent time in mental wards and things like that because of mental health stuff and depression, and have been, what is the word? Kind of disassociated from our families and things like that. And we are really tough people. We lived through all sorts of hell, and somehow we still are here, and we're still fighting, and we're still doing our thing. And it's often with so many movements, it's the people on the fringe that are the ones that make the movement. And people often look and they're like, oh, Stonewall, this is what happened. Trans Pride, this is where gay pride events that come in June. This is where they came from, was from Stonewall. Stonewall was a riot. Sylvia Rivera she actually threw a shot glass, and she is a trans woman of color. She was, Marsha P. Johnson, I think, was the other trans woman's name, that both trans women of color, that they were the ones that were protecting people and agitating and saying, that's it, we're done being beat up by the police, we're done being targeted. What would happen is the police would come in, and they had these atrocious laws back then where they would say, okay, if you have this plumbing, you have to have certain things. Like you have to be wearing at least 3 garments that are of that sex or gender, whatever you. And they would come in and they would specifically target the trans people of color. And so at some point, we're like, that's it. We're done being targeted. We're done being beaten. And I don't want to use all the triggery words, but all the awful things that happen and still happen. Trans people are just, so many of us are just so brilliant, really sharp minds. To be able to evolve and change at the pace that we have mastered change in ways that other people can't even imagine. And we need to be in leadership roles. We need access to, like, I love that the Portland Opera is doing this, that we're having a platform to speak. So trans pride and trans power is just, we are, so many of us are natural born leaders. And what's really exciting about this moment, yes, it's terrifying. Yes, there's a lot of really scary things happening. And at the same time, there's this like transformation that could happen right now. And I feel like is happening right now because people are like, oh, we need to do better. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that trans people had it this hard. We need to help them and we need to support them and not just show up and be like, all right, well, I'm in charge and you're gonna sit here and be my token trans person. Like, we're actually being handed the mic, like right now. And in the disability community, we have this expression, we say nothing about us without us. And that's so true for so many communities, trans community, for people of color, where it's just like, we don't need people to speak for us. We could speak for ourselves. And in fact, we can lead for ourselves. We can write policies for ourselves. We can do so much for ourselves, but we might not have been able to get into the institutions to become lawyers and doctors and, you know, high-level executives and running all this stuff. And many of us don't have interest in doing those things. A lot of us are anti-capitalists, including myself. Getting into those, you know, figuring out how we can get into those places and make those changes is still really important. A lot of people will say transgender, and under that term, we're including folks that identify as non-binary, which is folks that don't identify as male or female. They're like in the middle. I identify as non-binary, although I present as a very masculine person, obviously. However, like checking the mailbox doesn't quite feel exactly like the right place for me. There's a little bit of strategy involved for why we choose to be non-binary on our paperwork, or male or female, or other things like that. But transgender, I think kind of the blanket way that we talk about transgender is someone who was born with one set of plumbing and who realized at some point that that's not who they are. And for me, it's my first memory in my entire life. I was maybe 3 years old. And I remember thinking, when I grow up, I'm gonna be a boy. And my second thought was, and I can't tell anyone. And for me to already have, at the age of 3 years old, an awareness that this is wrong, speaks to that whole reality of like, okay, you're born, you have this plumbing, here's a blue hat, here's a pink hat. And it's like, what? And it's a little daunting, right? Because I think people are like, I wanna help, and they wanna reach out to the community, and then they're also like a little nervous because they're like, maybe they're gonna say the wrong thing or they're gonna mess it up. And unfortunately, that is what happens a lot of the time, right? And it's not because somebody's like, I'm trying to be a jerk about this and exclude people. It's because of this lovely term that I feel like I'm saying a million times a day right now, implicit bias. Implicit bias is this subconscious reality that we're all in, because it's like when we go to the ocean or the lakes, you know, and we put our stuff down. We get out there and we're swimming, we're doing our thing, and then we look, and then all of a sudden our stuff's all the way over there. That's what's happening right now with, you know, people say the not normal, hashtag not normal, and things like that. The drift happens, right? What my partner and I hope to do is create this curriculum for allies, especially around people of color and how to be allies for people of color. and bring in people with disabilities and bring in trans and queer people and other marginalized populations as well. Because what we see far too often is somebody that shows up that's like, I'm gonna show up and do this great thing and I have all these great intentions and I'm so excited. And they're showing up with their heart beaming and they wanna do all these great things. And then they show up and they like say the wrong words, or they like didn't think about what they're bringing to the project or whatever it is. And they end up, we've got intention and then we've got impact. And the impact gets like such a mess. And people, end up having all these hurt feelings, and it's really sad because so many of us, especially when we're talking about like women and trans people and queer people and things like this, like we're all gender minorities, but it's like everybody's always like women, but it's like, but I was a woman for all these years and like still have these parts and issues and things that I'm still dealing with around that. And I'm also trans, and it's like I'm still dealing with all these complications, and my life is even harder than it was when I was a woman in some ways, like, but not in other ways. And so it's complicated, right? And like that's another thing about this moment is we're being challenged to hold these incredibly complex contradictions, It's just like, holy moly, like it's so hard, but it is possible. I might have a further reach doing this YouTube thing with my partner and teaching people how to be true allies. And, one of the things that I really love to recommend to folks who are looking to be allies to communities that are marginalized is when you're going through like something that's like complicated, like you're showing up to do this thing and you might have hurt somebody's feelings or you don't understand what's happening. Instead of turning to the people who are marginalized and being like, break this down for me, you turn away from the people who are marginalized to other people who are there as allies and other people who maybe have more support, that might be a part of those communities, but might have more resources, might be a little bit higher up on the class structure and things like that, that have the time and energy to break these things down for you. Not the like disabled trans person of color that's like, listen, I'm just struggling to get out of bed and get here and eat and say these things on the mic and I have to go home and lay down now. I don't have time to like educate you for free. So it's complicated. How can we gently call each other out and then call each other in? I don't want to be like cannibalizing each other as we're doing this because we need each other right now. And I think that I think the time is running out for us to do this, right? We're like kids in the backseat of a long car ride just kind of smacking at each other because we're right there. And it's like, we need to pull the car over. You know what I mean? Knowing when to apologize and actually doing like a little bit of like, you don't have to spend a ton of time doing research on apologizing, but like maybe spend an hour or something researching apologies, because there are so many people that mess up apologies and make things worse. Whereas you could be like, for example, when I got hit by that car, I was on all these medications that it turns out I could not metabolize. And I was essentially completely out of my mind for about 5 years on these medications. The way they were working in my body, I was like an Alzheimer's patient. Couldn't hold a conversation, would like curl up in a ball in the middle of the living room and like get lost in the neighborhood, like would fall asleep with like a plate of food on my lap and yell at my partner when I would wake up and they were like taking the plate off my lap. Like I was just like a total mess. And I still did those things. I got into arguments with community members. I messed up. Like go back into my 20s, into my teen years, I was super homophobic, I was super transphobic. I didn't realize I was spewing white supremacy talk. I had no idea it was that I was caught in the drift of what I was around. Well, first of all, knowing when the apology is about you or about the person that you're apologizing to, is this gonna be of use to the person that I wronged? Or is it about me feeling better that I hurt somebody and now I can go back and say I'm sorry and feel better about it? So why am I apologizing? And then, if you decide that, or talk to a therapist or other trusted people that are, can help you move through that process, that apologizing is the right thing to do. Showing up and being able to say, I was there, I did this, I take responsibility for what I did. Like I have said to so many people, I was completely out of my mind at this time. And I was still there. I still said and did these things. And I am so sorry for how I hurt you. If I hurt you, please accept my apology or not. I just needed to let you know that I have come around and I realize I wronged you. And there is just so much that can come from a good apology. It's just people's hearts just open up and it's just like, wow, what else can we do together? So please consider checking out realchoiceoregon.com and donating and becoming involved with us as we help liberate people with disabilities from institutions. And also please check out healthcareforalloregon.org, HCAO.org, and help us to get universal healthcare for every Oregonian, no matter who they are. And everybody in, nobody out.